Hey everybody, good to see you. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Man, is it cold in Missouri, and I don't want any of you people up in Minnesota, North Dakota, and Wisconsin making any comments to me. I'm an old guy and I live in Missouri, and by golly, it's cold in Missouri. So I don't want to hear about it being 30 below in Minnesota right now. I just know I'm cold. So, hey everybody, welcome. It's really good to have you guys. We've got a lot going on tonight, so stay tuned. And I'm just going to tell you, it's going to be an unbelievable night. I'm not going to spill the beans right now. Hey, Lori, good to see you. Good to see you. If you guys would, start tapping that like button. You know the drill. I already see the likes going up. We need to get up to 10,000 likes so that we can get up there on the FYP page. Got a lot of really cool things to talk about tonight, guys. Thank you for joining the team. Everybody needs to join the team. We're going to be talking with my friend Andrew Short, who recently had a poll put out into the field to determine why Democrats did not vote in the last election. And we're going to be, listen, Johnny, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you only have 3 acres, okay? This is the biggest fraud. Now, Johnny, look, you come in here and you get me on a soapbox already, okay? Hang on a minute, Johnny. Hold that thought. My friend Andrew Short is coming in. We're going to talk about why Democrats didn't vote, and we're going to spend the first hour doing that, and then we're going to have a very special second hour, which I'm going to tell you about in a little while. No, Johnny, and I'll boot you out of here if you're just here to cause trouble. I never sold a Century Farm. So if you're saying, I may have misunderstood you, I thought you were saying you only owned a few acres. And I was going to tell you if that's the case, it's okay. You're still a farmer. The reason for that is the biggest fraud being perpetrated on farming and ranching right now is that you have to own a certain number of acres or be in a certain type of farming. In turn, okay, Johnny, I'll see you later, buddy. I'll see you later, buddy. And Johnny, if you're from my home county, come see me, friend. All right. So anyway, we're going to be talking tonight about the reason why Democrats didn't vote, and then we're going to be talking in the second half to Skyler Holden. Skyler Holden is going to join in the second half, and he is going to be just having a live conversation with me. We're going to talk about the video and all the things that happened to him. And we're going to be talking about the feedback and the blowback that both of us received. And we're going to have a really good conversation. So I hope you guys will stick around for the entire time. All right. Give me just a second here because I am going to take a look and see if my guest has requested up. He has. So I'm going to bring up Zeppo and I'm going to bring up Andrew. And we're going to have a talk. All right. Zeppo, good to see you. Andrew, how are you?
Doing great, Will. How you doing this evening?
Really good, really good. It's always good when one of your homeboys from your old stomping grounds decides to change their name and come up in your live to stir some shit. Nothing says Southwest Missouri more than that does. So that's pretty cool. Hey, listen, I really appreciate you coming up. This is a really, really important issue. We just hit 10,000, so we're going to jump in and get started here if you're ready. And I know that you notified me a little while ago that we may not have our other guest here, and I understand that. That's no problem. She sits on a committee there in Colorado, and that committee's going over today. That's okay. You can cover the data because I think it's really, really important data. And I just wanted to, at the beginning here, if you don't mind, I wanted to start out and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, Andrew, if you could.
Yeah. Hey, Will. Thanks for having me on the back 40. My name's Andrew Short. I'm executive director of One Main Street, Colorado. We're a
Yeah.
labor-led coalition focused on expanding the middle class, improving the quality of life for working folks. And today, I want to talk about something that's just not an issue here in Colorado.
Yeah.
It's a wake up call for national Democrats. We've got a real problem on our hands, as you know, Will.
Yeah.
And if we don't address it, it's going to cost us a lot of states, and it's going to affect elections all across the country. So, again, want to encourage your viewers, share this live with your Democratic friends right now, because we have a roadmap here on how to get things back on track. And let me tell you, some of these findings here in our poll are going to shock you. Will these This poll was conducted by Keating Research. You know that firm that called Lauren Boebert's race to be a toss-up in 2022?
Yep. Yep, I do.
That and no one listened. That is Keating Research. You know, she went on to edge out a victory by about 500 votes there. But that's Keating Research. They're a gold standard in polling, and what we did here was really almost a focus group more than a poll. We polled 1,225 folks across the state of Colorado, including some deep dives in some rural areas. And you know, this poll shows that voters in Colorado, traditionally a blue state, are feeling very disconnected from the Democratic Party.
Yeah,
And
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 I saw you were polite enough to share the data with me in the beginning, and for the live tonight. And I got to tell you, I expected to see some of the information that was in there, but I don't think you've oversold this at all. A lot of what I saw in there was incredible. And I thought, okay, we got to have a really frank conversation. The numbers that I've seen since the election are that anywhere from 12 to 14 million Democrats didn't vote, or at least 12 to 14 million people who supported Joe Biden in the last election didn't come out to vote in this election for what we could assume would have been overwhelmingly for Kamala Harris. So, this is the place to do this, because all the folks that come in here and follow me, they're looking for us to be straight shooters. And I think it's really critical that we're straight shooters. And so the floor is yours. I'll ask questions if you don't mind as we go along, but why don't I just let you jump into the data?
Terrific. Well, thanks, Will. You know, let's dive into this poll. And this is again not just a snapshot of Colorado; it's a warning sign for the Democratic Party as a whole. Right now, firstly, you can go to onemainstreetcolorado.org and download the poll. This is a gift. This is a roadmap
Yeah.
that every Democrat needs to read and see. But right now, 24% of voters in Colorado believe that the Democratic Party is out of touch with their everyday struggles.
Yeah.
That's a quarter of the voters.
25%.
That's
Wow.
and looking deeper into the issues, Will, 29% of Coloradans rank the economy, the cost of living, as the number one concern. Housing costs come shortly behind that at 27%.
Yeah.
And
Hey, Andrew,
these are
it looks like in the comments we got a couple of people that may want to follow along in the poll. Could you give that
Mhm.
website one more time?
Yeah, you can go to onemainstreetcolorado.org. That's one mainstreetcolorado.org. You're going to see a mini button over in the left corner, and you can sign up. You can download that poll right there. You'll find some key findings. You'll find the statewide poll, and you'll see where we did some deep dives in some of the urban and rural areas and suburban areas across the state.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I saw a couple of questions, so I thought I'd get it out of you one more time. So basically, just walking into this, we know that the economy played a huge role in the lack of turnout in this past election, and this poll breaks that down. So let you just continue.
Yeah, so going back, cost of living, housing, these are the key issues we must address to regain trust. You know, if these issues are being felt in Colorado, we can be sure they're being felt nationwide in battleground states like Michigan, Arizona, and Pennsylvania. And the poll shows that Coloradans are looking for pragmatic candidates who are going to roll up their sleeves, get things done. Rather than a candidate who's challenging the political establishment and pushing for the status quo, to push for more ideological or social change. In fact, in our poll, we found 76% of voters prefer a pragmatic candidate who will find common ground to pass legislation that helps working people. That's the direction we need to head toward if we want to win over more voters, finding solutions to the real challenges they're facing here.
I think that's critical because, Andrew, a few days ago, the night before the Super Bowl, He's actually going to join us for the second half of the live today. There's a rancher up in by St. Louis, Missouri, and for those of you that don't know, Andrew's from our neck of the woods here, even though he lives in Colorado now. But there was a rancher up by St. Louis, Missouri, that basically made a video that said, I entered into this conservation program with the federal government, and I just got notified recently that I'm not going to get my payout. And he made it clear because of the amount. It was $80,000, which is a lot of money if you're a farmer or a rancher. He made it clear that if he had to pay that out of his own savings or sell cattle to pay it, in the end, there was a chance that it could cost him his farm. And, I did a response video to that because there were so many people coming out and just saying, I hope you lose your farm. That's what you deserve because you voted, for Donald J. Trump. And listen, you know me well. We've worked together before. On election night, I told my boys, I said, maybe some people have to eat out of trash cans before we understand, the ramifications of electing a man like Donald J. Trump. That was my frustration speaking then. Now what I know is that if we lose farmers and ranchers in this country and Skylers and the Wills and everybody else, we're not the only ones that are going to be hurt, right? We're not the only ones that are going to be hurt. It's going to be single moms and poor kids and 250 to 300 million people around the world that go to bed hungry every night. So I think the reason why that video went viral and why so many people saw something in that video that that drew attention to it is because of what you just said. People are looking for us to come up with solutions, and sometimes we're going to have to do that together. But I got to tell you, and I've told a lot of my Democratic friends this, I've caught more heat from the people on our side of the aisle by far than heat I've caught from people on the other side of the aisle. Just literally telling me, screw these people. You shouldn't talk to anybody on the other side. Let them all, eat out of trash cans. And, I understand the thought behind that, but I can't see it happening in food and in farming and ranching because of the ramifications that's going to have on everybody else,
Will, you're exactly right. That's the problem. You pull the cornbread out of the oven, and the edges are nice and crusty, but it ain't baked in the middle.
No,
And
that's right.
and we've elected new leadership here nationally with Democrats, and we need to make sure they respond. We've seen a lack of focus on these basic economic struggles, and when the issues that people care about most aren't getting the attention they deserve, they tune us out.
Yeah, they do.
Um,
Thanks for everybody coming in from Felisa's live. I appreciate it. I see you there. Thank you. So
Will, can you?
75% want us to 75% want us to work together to find better strategies. Where does the poll go from there?
Yeah, and Will, can you give me 10 seconds? I'm having trouble with my video here.
Yeah, you
Let me
bet.
turn that on.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No,
One
no
second
problem.
here.
Yeah, no problem. Hey guys, while Andrew's taking care of that, just want to tell everybody welcome to the live. What we're doing here in the beginning for the first hour until 7 o'clock Central Time, we're going to be covering a poll that Andrew's firm put in the field that talks about why Democratic voters did not vote in the last election. And he's going to be talking about the issues that were important to them that they felt like weren't advocated in the last election. I'm not saying that any of these reasons are good, bad, or indifferent. We're just looking at what are the reasons. And I see everybody from Felice. Thank you for coming in after her live. I wanted to tell everybody in the second part of the live, during the second half of the live, starting at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, we're going to have Skyler Holden, who is the young rancher up by St. Louis, Missouri, who made the video that I responded to. He's going to be coming in, and we're just going to be having a conversation with each other. And I'd really like it if you guys would stick around, and maybe you'll learn something from that. I hope I do, and maybe Skyler will too. So anyway, Andrew, if you've got everything worked out, go ahead. I don't want to steal your thunder.
Hey, no worries. I don't think my camera's going to come on today, but that's okay. What we found out here, the reason this poll is a wake-up call is because Coloradans are saying they want to hear about the things that matter to them: jobs that pay a living wage, affordable housing, relief from skyrocketing cost of living. And these are things that we can actually do something about. we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to focus on getting people back to work, making housing affordable, and creating policies that make sure people don't have to choose between groceries and gas. And in the past, Democrats have been the party of economic empowerment, the ones who fought for upward mobility and economic opportunity. But right now, the message is getting muddied, and we need to get back to our roots and remind people that we are the ones who can change their lives for the better by focusing on real economic challenges they're
I
facing.
agree with that 100%. Hey, everybody, if you would follow Andrew so that he can. Andrew, I think the reason your camera won't come on is because you don't have enough followers. So we're going to have everybody follow you here, and hopefully at some point you'll be able to click it on. But yeah, sorry about that. I didn't think of that ahead of time. All the rules that TikTok has,
Oh,
right?
his
So.
account is private. Your account's private, Andrew, so they're gonna not be able to follow you.
No, that's okay.
Got it. Got
That's
it.
all right. We can talk about the issues in the poll without seeing your pretty face. We'll be okay. So,
Great, thank you.
yeah.
Here's a key point. Will, Republicans are winning by focusing on the basics.
Hmm.
Now let's face the reality. Republicans are beating us on the issues that matter most to working class voters, and this poll tells us that voters believe Republicans are more in touch with the working class, especially on economic issues like the cost of living and housing costs. They've capitalized on this by focusing on basic problems people are facing every day. They're talking about those problems anyway. They're talking about jobs that pay, affordable
Yeah.
housing, controlling cost, and here's the kicker. Will, what's even more troubling is that Republicans have done better on key issues like, according to the poll, addressing inflation, the cost of living, and understanding the challenges voters are facing. Our poll shows that voters feel the Republican Party has a better grasp on these issues depending on what subject we're talking about, by 8 to 11 percentage points.
Yeah.
That the Republicans are doing a better job. Yeah.
Yeah, and Andrew, I want to make it clear to everybody because I don't want to wake up tomorrow morning from with an inbox full of Democrats telling me that we're supporting Trump tonight. Let me make it clear to everybody what Andrew's talking about. Nobody here is saying that the Republicans and Donald Trump have better policies than the Democrats. We're simply reading out to you what a poll says. This poll shows that for whatever reason, because of trickery, deceit, a better message, better implementation, whatever it might be, the majority of people that did not vote in this past election have these feelings. We have to address this, in my opinion, Andrew, because in order to get these people to come out and vote, we've got to do a better job of messaging these issues out to people that believe the way we do. And I see the comments in there about racism and that type of thing, and I understand where you're coming from because I feel the same way, guys. I wake up in the morning and I say, regardless of who had a prettier message, why wouldn't you stand up for the morally right thing to do? Okay? Well, this poll is telling us why. So what I would recommend everybody do is take a deep breath and just listen to what these polls number shows, because this poll isn't telling us why Republicans did one thing or another. Okay? This poll is telling us why our own people didn't vote. All right? And it's important for us to listen to that message. So Andrew, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Hey, thank you for that, Will. What this poll is saying is we need to focus on pragmatic solutions that are going to address these
Right.
concerns. And if we're not talking about creating high quality jobs, tackling housing affordability, strong unions, the backbone of the middle class, in the minds of voters, we've let Republicans frame the debate around economic issues that has undermined our credibility as the party of working people. So that's what that's the heart of what this poll is saying. Colorado is a blue state, and it's showing us something really important. This poll tells us if
Yeah,
these issues are popping up here, they're definitely being felt across the country in battleground states.
that's right. That's right. I'm really interested to hear. Did you break down like I know that housing and economic issues and those types of things? How deep into the woods, into the weeds, did the poll get on each one of these issues?
Yeah, so again, this wasn't like a multiple choice question type of poll.
Yeah.
This allowed for open-ended answers. And so, we asked folks in the November election, Democrats lost the presidency, the U.S. Senate, and some key U.S. House races, we asked folks, why do you think Democrats lost these races?
Hmm.
And 24% of folks said Democrats are out of touch with voters. 18% of folks said it was poor messaging and communications. Another 18% said economic concerns. 17% said there's too much focus on social issues. And 13% said lack of leadership and organization.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, all of that makes sense. It makes sense to me because, the funny thing is about this is that a lot of Democrats get upset whenever they hear the results of polling like this, okay? But really, if we're honest with ourselves, this is the same thing a lot of us were saying during the election, okay? There were a lot of people saying that we weren't talking about the specifics of how we were going to make houses easier to buy for younger couples that were working, full-time jobs but couldn't afford to rent, let alone buy a house. There were a lot of people that were talking about, the fact that the economy has just left them behind. We're allowing real estate investors to come in and buy up. We just released, where I'm from in Bolivar, Missouri, in Polk County, right? They just released the numbers here in the state of Missouri, city by city, for cities that are growing the fastest, poverty rate, and that type of thing. In my hometown of Bolivar, Missouri, where I was born, where I was raised, after we sold our family farm, they are the third or fourth fastest growing city in the state of Missouri, but they've also got one of the highest poverty rates in the state of Missouri. And as I was looking through the data on that today, Andrew, like one of the things that it showed is that the number of people that own their houses in all these counties with a high poverty rate, the percentage is way lower than the percentage of people that own their houses in the counties that have a lower poverty rate. And the reason for that is, I've got a lot of friends that are real estate investors, et cetera, things like that. But the reason for that is over the past 5 years in my home county, in my old hometown, there have been people just buying up all the houses that become available to make those rental structures. And, people that cannot come up with a down payment on a house or afford a monthly payment because of the skyrocketing housing prices, they have to rent. And you just see this in city after city on this list. Every city that I looked at that was either shrinking in size or had low house ownership rates, they had the highest poverty rates in the state of Missouri. So these are things we've got to talk about, because if you can't feed your family, if you can't find a roof to put over your head, and if you don't have, some sort of solid economic plan in place and an ability to support yourself and your family, all these other moral issues and things that we care about as Democrats go out the window. The pyramid is real, and that's why I'm really glad you guys did this poll.
Hey, thanks, Will. And I see some comments, around the cultural issues and as a gay man, near and dear to my heart, there and around choice issues. And I think there's a way we can talk about some of these social issues, and that's in the lens of economic empowerment. We
Mm-hmm.
know that when women are above the poverty line, they're much less likely to have or need abortion services. We know that 50% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ. And when we're having more housing options, when we're having more access to high quality jobs, that's a lens, a tool in the toolbox we can use when addressing some of these culture issues. Is let's bring it back to the economy and basic economics. By more than 3-1, Coloradans agree that the Democratic Party recognized that voters have legitimate concerns around whether it be taxation, the cost of living, or immigration. The overall percentage on that was 72%. When asked which statement about the Democratic Party do you agree with more, 72% said the Democratic Party needs to recognize that most voters have legitimate concerns around immigration,
Yeah.
taxation, and the cost of living. 22% said The Democratic Party is not progressive enough on issues like fighting for economic equality, standing up to capitalism, expanding social programs. Now, if we look at break that down to just Democrats, that's 52% to 41, and among unaffiliated voters, those coveted unaffiliated independent-minded voters, that was astonishing 73% to 20%.
Yeah, and the reason I think this is so important, and again, I'm going to keep stressing this over and over again over the next 35 minutes that we're talking, is this is our own people telling us this, right? These are people that agree with us on the social issues. They agree with us on the culture war issues, right? So if our own people are telling us that we didn't do an effect, listen, this is the bottom line, and you and I have been doing this for a long time, whether it's right or wrong. The truth is, when people feel that they don't have any hope, that nobody is fighting the battle for them, they're going to vote for the person that screams the loudest that they're being screwed. We've seen this over and over again in politics, whether it's a local race, a statewide race, or a federal race. The candidate that can build the most angst, short of speaking directly to the economic fears that people have, are the candidates that are going to win. And that's what happened in this last election. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and you tell me if you think this makes sense based on what your poll said. When you went out and you looked on, and I voted for her and I supported her, but when you went out and you looked on the Kamala Harris website during the last election, it was really high-level policy stuff in regard to how we were going to make housing more affordable. Okay, there were bullet points on there about changing local zoning laws. There were bullet points on there about working with local officials to make sure that we were zoning things residential instead of residential and commercial, which made the tax rates go up in those areas. And when you went through all the policy in there, it just gave a really broad overview of things like, we have an oligarchy forming in this country, and there are a lot of people that don't make a livable wage. And it needed to be a twofold attack. Number one, we have to do something about Wall Street buying up all the housing in this country and renting it back to the people that used to own those homes. We have to do something about that. It makes it a little bit difficult to do that, when it's just a free-for-all with, as to who can raise as much money from the billionaires and millionaires. But you know what? When you take a millionaire's money, you got to tell them we're going to stand up for the working people of this country. That's what you're paying for, is a message that does that. And then the second thing is, on top of that, is, talking about income and what we need to do to make sure that people are being paid more income in this country. One of the main reasons, if you go out and you read about this economically, one of the main reasons that companies can't pay their employees higher wages, the larger public companies, is because they're doing so many stock buybacks. They're spending billions of dollars of their profits to buy stock back from their shareholders to financially improve their situation in the marketplace. And these are the kinds of things, and I'm plugged in as anybody. I lived on the news during this election, reading everything I could get my hands on, following the different candidates. And although we talked about the high level issue of affordable housing and that type of thing, we didn't really explain well enough to people, is what I'm hearing in your poll, as to how we were going to change that by taking on the wealthy, by taking on Wall Street, and trying to change some of these laws around, how much farmland and ranch land and real estate you can invest in, and how we're going to, balance out the burden amongst these public companies so they can pay more wages to the employees that work for them. And I think that's fair. I'm going to be right up front with you. I don't think that's enough to justify voting for Donald Trump, but I think the concerns are fair, and we've got to listen to them.
Bingo, Will. That is it. We know Democrats are better on these issues, better for working people, better for our middle class. But the message we had just doesn't resonate. When we asked, please indicate if the statement better describes the Democratic Party or Republican Party. And let me give you four issues here.
Yeah.
Addressing inflation and the cost of living. Democrats 35%, Republicans 46%. That's an 11-point deficit. understands the challenges you're facing. Democrats 36%, Republicans 44%. That's an 8-point deficit. Represents the working class. Man, this gets me. Democrats 38%, Republicans 46%. That's an 8-point deficit. And then takes reasonable and pragmatic positions. You have a man who led an insurrection on the
Yeah.
U.S. Capitol. It's
Yeah.
tied. Democrats 40%, Republicans 40%. Break even there.
Yeah.
Um, it's a flashing warning sign.
Andrew, tell me what you think about this. We've talked about this before on my live. I think part of the problem that the Democratic Party has right now, and I feel really good that the new guy is going to help address this because they did a lot of this in Minnesota when he was the Democratic Party chair there. But everything I read, I'm a nerd. I go out and read the studies about where people get their news from, what are the main sources of information out there. And I read a couple of publications after the election that said 80% of people that voted for Donald Trump, 80% of them get their news from either podcasts or YouTube. It's almost down to the single digits how many people on the conservative side of the fence get their news from mainstream media. So part of the problem is too, like when you go out into the ecosphere of podcasts and things like that, there are a lot of small people like me out there that are doing TikTok lives, and they've got their own basement podcast and things like that. But there aren't a lot of people out there. The Republicans, they get their millionaires and their billionaires to donate to supporting their creators online. And then their creators online, they carry the same message out into the ecosphere, right? And they deliver that message over and over and over again. And I don't want us to do the same thing. I don't want us to all be like Sinclair Media, where you put everybody's face up in the square and they're repeating the same line. But I do think the Democratic Party is going to have to invest some dollars in supporting creators out there that are delivering their message through alternative media resources. Because the fact is, we know we are better on economic issues, but it's not reaching the people who are voting, even in our own party. And your poll proves that. And it's not the only poll to show that. For anybody that thinks, this is a fluke or an outlier or something like that, it's not. The exit polling on election day showed that. So I think we've got to do a better job, because I see some people in the comments going, I heard Kamala say that. I heard Kamala say that. I heard Kamala say that. I heard Tim Walz say that. Yes, they did. But we've got to remember that these people, their news sources are much, much different from the news sources that we utilize. And we've got to be there on those sources talking about these issues. Do you think that's a valid argument?
Yeah, absolutely, Will. What I'll add to that is, we have an image problem,
Yeah.
and let's go to what it means to live the American dream, and depending on what generation you're in, that means different things to different people. For some folks, it means white picket fence. I got a good steady job and I have a pension. For other folks, maybe I run and operate my own small business. For maybe millennials, Gen Zers, it's I want to be able to work remote, travel the country, and have a roof over my head and food on the table. When it comes to the economy and the cost of living, we asked which one should Colorado Democrats focus more on, and we broke that off in two questions because I think Democrats have been labeled as anti-business, and I'm talking small business, any business, right?
Right.
And we
Right.
know that one of the key ways to upward mobility is not just home ownership and the generational wealth that comes with home ownership, but it's also being able to own and operate your own small business. So we asked, when it comes to the economy and cost of living, which one of the following should Colorado Democrats focus more on? Number one, reducing financial burdens on families and small businesses while creating opportunities for good paying jobs and building generational wealth. And amongst Democrats, 48% said yes, focus on that. Among unaffiliated voters, and once you take
Andrew,
note of
can you
unaffiliated,
read that question again? Because I want everybody to hear that part. 'Cause that's a really high number, I think. I think people will be surprised by that amongst Democrats. Can you just read that question again and then read the response number again?
yeah, the question is, when it comes to the economy and cost of living, which one should Colorado Democrats focus more on? Number one, reducing financial burdens on families and small businesses while creating opportunities for good paying jobs and building generational wealth. 48% of Democrats said that. Now, the second option is, or should they support on providing rent control, free health care, and a minimum basic income? 45% of Democrats said focus on that. So it was close, but let's look at unaffiliated voters.
Yeah.
And when we look at unaffiliated voters, 69% of unaffiliated voters said reduce financial burdens on families and small businesses while creating opportunities for good paying jobs and building generational wealth, while 24%, only 24%, provide rent control, free healthcare, and minimum basic income.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, those are some stunning numbers, you know.
Andrew,
But I mean, it makes sense, you know.
can I ask, to Will's point, we were there during the Kamala campaign, right? Same places we are now. Did they just do a better message? Sorry, a better distribution of messaging?
And are you referring to Colorado or nationally? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm referring nationally. I'm talking about the Charlie Kirks and the Ben Shapiros who carry this message to, millions of young people, especially. Did they just get their message out to more people?
I would say they explained their message simply and to more folks, right? I mean, we saw Donald Trump go on the Joe Rogan show. Not here to not a fan, but he went out and did a unique tour there. Whereas Kamala worked her tail off, man, and she had a late start for the presidency. But I think the answer to your question is yeah. Republicans' message was short and simple. We have a saying in politics: keep it short and simple. And while we were here saying, "Hey, we're bringing down inflation," folks had moved on from the talk of inflation, and they were talking about the cost of living and cost of eggs. Now, you and I know that there's a direct correlation, right? But we were talking about bringing down inflation, and Trump was saying, "I'm going to bring down your grocery bill, and we're going to lower the cost of eggs." It was just simple.
And we all know what happened with the eggs, right? So, yeah. Keep going. Other items in there that you want to talk about?
Yeah, let me. I do want to emphasize one thing,
Yeah.
because we had Republicans in this poll. I'm not talking a lot about them. Immigration was a big issue, certainly for Republicans and very conservative Latinos. But when we talked about the most important issues, challenges facing the state here. Again, cost of living and housing was mentioned by more than half of Democrats and unaffiliateds. So
Yeah.
I know you're seeing numbers where it's like 29%, 27%, but when you break it down by party, those two alone were mentioned by over half of Democrats and unaffiliated voters. So, I think one of the troubling aspects of this poll is the fact that many urban Democratic voters stayed home in the last
Yeah.
election.
Yeah.
And it just shows us, we weren't speaking to their needs. And if we take a deeper look at the voter turnout and why people didn't vote, I think we can find that poor messaging and a lack of focus on critical issues played a huge role in keeping urban voters away from the polls.
Yeah.
That's where we had people stay home, folks. If we don't get back to the core issues, we're going to see more and more urban voters decide that their vote doesn't matter, or that the Democratic Party is no longer speaking for them.
Well,
And we got
it's
to.
even more critical when you think about all the different actions that our Republicans are taking to suppress people, from registering to vote. So it's almost like you've got this killer combo out there, right?
Mhm.
We're not going to the places where Republicans get their news from, so they're not hearing the message. I do think I'm going to say this, and I'll probably regret it, but I do want to say that I have seen some beginnings of change in the Democratic Party in terms of the sources that they're going to
Yes.
go to begin getting their message out. I think it's clear that they understand that younger people are not turning on, CBS, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, Fox News, etc. They're going to podcasts for the majority of their news and information. They're they're going to YouTube to watch directly the candidates that are involved in an election. So I am beginning to see the first inklings of the Democratic Party making that change. The other thing is, what your poll is telling me is that some of this social media that the Republicans were doing was also bleeding its way into Democrats who were watching it. And maybe it was building some concern levels among them as well. I mean, I can't prove that, and there's no way in the poll, obviously, to prove that. But when you've got, Democrats saying that they're concerned about some of the same issues that revolve around the culture war, that means that their message is making it into the Democratic Party as well. So it makes it even more critical for us to push back against it, right?
Yeah, totally will, and I want to I do want to get a point out there. I've
Yeah.
talked to a lot of legislators who just work their tail off, and they went
Mm-hmm.
and they spoke to these everyday issues around grocery bills and cost of living, and they won their elections in really tough seats. And some of the feedback that folks came back with is like, man, it is really tough at the doors because many voters, unaffiliated voters, feel like we're speaking down to them.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing I think a turn change, a tide change with Democratic leadership, because Democrats can't afford to be top down anymore. We need to focus on grassroots leadership. This isn't about a few big name politicians pushing their agenda from Washington. It's about listening to real people, the ones struggling with the high
Mm-hmm.
cost, low wages, and no access to affordable housing.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that, and I think it's kind of like I hate to keep going back to it, but it's like when I talked with Skyler. We've been messaging back and forth, and we're going to talk tonight on the live. But just the act of me doing that, even though I made it clear in my video, we're going to keep fighting as hard as we can against the policies of Donald J. Trump. I'm willing to listen to you. If you really want to know why people are upset with you, I'll tell you why they're upset with you. And I walk through the history of, the change in the fairness doctrine and what talk radio has done to our country, and how, Donald J. Trump has injured rural America. Well, it's funny that all the people on our side that came after me, none of them attacked me on any of those issues. Okay. None of them said, you're wrong that Trump's bad for agriculture. You're wrong about the fairness doctrine. You're wrong about the impact of talk radio. They all came after me because I had the audacity to talk to somebody on the other side. And that isn't going to get us anywhere. We have got to be willing to talk to these Democrats that did not vote, and we've got to do it in a better way so that they hear us. And that doesn't make us turncoats. It doesn't make us MAGA. It just means we realize that there's more than one way to communicate, and we've got to use every way so that we can reach them and get the point across. So, I don't mind saying it. I'm an old guy, and it's just water off my back when somebody attacks me. But it's like, if you don't want to talk to anybody, if you just want to keep doing it the same old way we've been doing it, then get used to the results we had in November.
Will, this poll showed that especially working class voters are looking for Democrats to work with Republicans to pass solutions. A
Yeah.
solid 65% of voters say that it's extremely or very important for Democrats to work with Republicans. This isn't just a pipe dream. This is the reality of what voters want, and they're sick.
Yeah.
They're sick of partisan bickering. They want pocketbooks over political ideology, and they're sick of this inability to get things done. And we need to recognize that the only way forward is to build cross-party solutions that actually get results. Now, I know, when we're talking about MAGA, that's that. How do we collaborate with some of these folks? And collaboration doesn't mean agreeing on everything, especially when it comes to some extremist positions.
Right.
But it is about finding common ground on issues that matter most to everyday people. And right now, what we're seeing is that people are concerned with the cost of living, affordable housing, and good paying jobs. And that should transcend party lines. Now, while Republicans may take extreme positions on certain issues, there's still some space for some bipartisanship here. I believe it, where we can focus on solutions. For instance, when it comes to things like job creation or infrastructure, there's some opportunity to find some common ground by working with folks on policies that directly benefit working people, or improving wages. We can put people first. I think the key is to avoid getting bogged down in this ideological battles and keep the focus on what's best for the people, even though
Yeah,
we may not
and
agree
I
on
think
everything.
I think too what we're seeing now, Andrew, especially today, there's a whole subculture on social media of people saying I made a mistake, I voted for the wrong person, and I mean, I'm not going to lie, I tell everybody all the time on this live, I'm not Pollyanna. I'm not going to sit here and say that when I see those videos, I don't go, oh, thank goodness they get it now. I think the same thing everybody else does. I'm like, well, what the hell did you expect to have happen? I mean, that's the bottom line. I have the same reaction as everybody else. Well, now we're starting to see it now it's only a few, I get that, okay? But look at what Grassley did today. I mean, he basically came out and said, I can't remember his exact verbiage, but he said he's destroying the U.S. government. And you're starting to see some of the few remaining old school Republican Congress people, come out and say that. So as bad as things are, like I saw the budget today, they're going to cut $250 billion more dollars out of agriculture. They're going to cut $450 billion out of Medicaid, which funds rural health care across the board. They're going to cut $350 billion out of schools and education, much of which goes to rural schools. So even if it's just the beginnings of it, Andrew, we're starting to see people say, oh my God, what have I done? And that's an opportunity. I know not everybody is going to agree with me because it's the whole FAFO thing, and I get it, but that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity to change minds. And that's what Trump did. He just did it with hate. If we can come back and change some of those minds with policy, that's a good thing. Because look at it. They voted for Obama twice, then they voted for Trump, then they came back and voted for Biden, and then they voted for Trump again. And I know that a lot of that is misogyny, and I know a lot of that is racism, but not all of it is. The Democrats that did that, I think your poll shows that it was because of economic issues, whether we believe it's right or wrong. So I think that this mea culpa that some of these people are doing is an opportunity for us to step into that gap and say, come back into the fold and let's fight against these things that are so awful for America.
Well, yeah, it's a call to action. You're
Yeah,
getting to the heart of it. What do we
yeah,
do about it, right? What do we do about this?
yeah,
And I think supporting the Back 40 here, supporting independent journalism as you're doing, it's simple. We need to get back to the basics: jobs that pay, affordable housing, fighting the rising cost of living. And if we don't put solutions on the table, we're going to keep seeing defections to the GOP. Republicans they're not going to stop selling themselves as the party that looks out for working people. And if we don't step up to the plate and address these problems, we risk losing the national conversation.
that's right.
Um, the middle of the cornbread needs to be baked through, and
Yeah,
if we don't
that's right.
focus on what matters to working families, we're gonna lose this fight, and it's going to be a long, hard road back. But now's the time to act. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's already started with me. It's like anytime you step up to the plate, the most dangerous person in America right now is the person that says we have to work together as a country to defeat what Trump is trying to do. That's the most dangerous person in America right now. Now, everybody listen to what I said. I didn't say the most dangerous person in America is the person that forgives what Trump did and tries to go along to get along, okay? There's a delineation between what I'm saying. We have to fight everything he's doing day after day after day after day to defeat it. But when somebody has a mea culpa and they admit they were wrong and they're willing to say, I made a mistake, then we need to give them the opportunity to join their voice with ours to push back against what's happening in this country. Because it's going to take all of us. I mean, look at what they did in Hungary, right? They used immigration in the same way Trump did to turn people against one another, using immigration as a policy to do that. I mean, the problem with immigration in this country is as simple as we don't have an H-2A visa program in this country that works. If you try to go through that program, there are some places where only 4% of the people apply and get approved. And if you go through that program to do the harvesting of crops, for the most part they show up 22 days late in the field. If the Democrats and Republicans would get together just to fix the H-2A visa problem, and then if our government would work as hard to help fix the governments of Central and South America as they did to break them, the undocumented immigration problem would go away pretty quickly, pretty quickly. So I'm really glad that you guys did this poll, and it's going to be our choice, guys. We can listen, or we can roll our eyes and say, well, that's stupid. They should have voted against him anyway. My goal is going to be to try to deliver my message out there, to talk not only about what the problems are, but what we can do to fix it and how we can all get involved in fixing it. And I think we're beginning to see the beginnings of that in the Democratic Party in terms of where they're going to deliver their message to, Andrew. So this is a great poll. Let me ask you this. You've got some candidates out in Colorado that won, even though Donald Trump won at the national level. You've got some Democrats out there that did well. Did they do a really effective job of delivering the economic message that's kind of called out in this poll? Is that why they won?
Yeah, we're a blue state. We have strong majorities here in Colorado in the state ledge. We have a Democratic governor, and we're one seat shy of a supermajority in the state house, one seat shy of a supermajority in the state senate. But we did lose a tough congressional race
Yeah.
in congressional district 8 by a very slim margin. Had a great candidate there, but several minor party candidates involved there too. What I will say is this: we can look at one of the races where we flipped a seat that was Republican, and we lost a seat that was Democratic, and that was down more towards the Colorado Springs
Mm-hmm.
area. And both of the seats were swing seats. There's a Senate and a House race, and they overlapped each other. And the Senate seat was held by a Republican guy named Mark Snyder, is a Democrat there. He ran there. He worked his tail off. He went door to door. He talked about working people issues, cost of living, grocery bills, and he flipped that seat in a year like we just had from Republican to Democratic. Now, inside that Senate district was a Democratic incumbent in the House. And she was running for reelection, worked her tail off, but, she was pursuing more ideological battles and purity test and her run of reelection for the state house. And that seat actually flipped. It went from Democratic to Republican. So I think
Yeah.
I think that's a good microism of not just here in Colorado, but nationally on how we got to approach the issues.
Yeah, and I think there's an important lesson here to understand that nobody's saying that we need to quit talking about these human rights issues, right? It's just that they can't replace 100% the economic discussion that needs to take place as well. And to your point, they can be tied in together, right? I mean, because I personally believe in all the sociological studies that I've read, all of the sociology studies that I've read on the topic say that when people are economically worse off, when they're poor, when they're in poverty, when they have housing problems, when they're hungry, they're much more likely to fall for nationalism, racism, and white Christian nationalism than they are if those economic problems are solved. So to your point, Andrew, these two things have to be wrapped together in a single message because, like I said, it's just the needs pyramid, right? If you don't have housing and you're worrying about where your next meal's coming from, regardless of your moral code, you're going to vote for the person that you feel is going to be able to help you meet those basic needs. And unfortunately, people fell for it. So I couldn't agree more with what you said, and I just appreciate you bringing the poll to us. Do you mind? Can we put that poll out on our Discord so that everybody that was in here today listening to it can go take a look at it?
Absolutely. Please go
Okay.
take a look at it. Please download it. Please share it. This is a gift that we want to make sure Democrats across the country see.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you while you're on here, if you don't mind. Can you talk a little bit about what your political action committee does, what you guys do, and some of the successes that you've had?
Yeah, well, we're first off, One Main Street, Colorado. Again, we're a labor-led coalition of building trades, firefighters, you know, and construction unions. We work hand in hand with business leaders. As a C4 nonprofit here, we focus on three main issues: upgrading or expanding the middle class, upgrading our core infrastructure, fostering a stronger business environment here. We do engage in political activity, as many C4 nonprofits do. We make endorsements and races,
Mm-hmm.
and we do engage and support leaders who focus on middle class bread and butter kitchen table issues. We also look to bring to support folks who support civility and collaboration to the big issues facing Colorado. We got some big issues to face, and if we
Yeah.
aren't willing to work together, collaborate, and solve problems, nothing's going to get done. And we've been in a lot of progressive fights here at One Main Street, Colorado. We believe being progressive means you do collaborate and you work with others and you move the needle on issues that are important to the people. Not that you take your ball and go home when you don't get 100% of what you want.
That's
So
right.
that's really the core of what we're about. We work with our community partners in the Latino community, great organizations like the NAACP State Conference. We host career fairs, are heavily involved in workforce development trainings with our union partners,
That's
and
great.
all
Yeah.
around working to create that upward mobility.
Well, when I wanted you to say all that because I know that, but a lot of times when people hear the word PAC, they think of this nefarious wizard behind the curtain organization that is just pulling in massive amounts of money and spending it. And I wanted people to know about all the other work you do. So I really appreciate it. Any questions in the comments, guys, for Andrew before we let him go continue to do the Lord's work? Anybody have a question? Maybe we could take one here. Let's see. The comments are always behind the comments are always behind. So, okay. Hey, listen, Andrew, thank you so much. People want to know how they get involved. They're in Colorado and they want to know if they can help out with what you're doing there.
Terrific. Yeah, please go to our website, onemainstreetcolorado.org. I'll type that in the chat box here in a minute.
I did.
Onemainstreetcolorado.org. Terrific. Thank you. And ping us, and we want to pitch in and work together to make Colorado a better place for working middle class families. So thank you.
That's
I have a
awesome. Andrew?
question for
Yeah, go ahead.
Andrew.
Go ahead.
Andrew, can we please have your guy, Kyle, is it Kyle Clark, do the debates next time?
Oh, he was
You,
great, wasn't he?
Oh,
he
yeah.
was amazing.
He was. He was.
He was great. He holds them accountable.
He sure does. There's no BS here. So
That's awesome,
definitely.
Andrew. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate you. I can get on here and read all the data out of the poll, but I wanted everybody to get a chance to hear it directly from you since your organization asked for the poll, and I know we're going to have you on again. So thank you very much.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Will. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
All
Thank
right,
you,
we'll see
Andrew.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Okay, everybody, listen. We're gonna change things up here a little bit. Okay, I want to let everybody know what I'm gonna do. So I told you guys before the live, I did a video, and I told you at the beginning of the live that Skyler Holden is going to come on now, and we're going to have a conversation. I want to say a few things about this before I bring Skyler up. First, I'm going to drop everybody that's in the guest request right now. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I promised Skyler, and I feel the same way about this. I want to have this conversation one-on-one with Skyler. So it's just going to be Skyler and I up in the box while we have this conversation. And I'm going to ask guys if you would. Skyler's got a lot of people that have followed him in here to see the conversation. And we've got a lot of our friends from the back 40 in here to watch the conversation. There are a lot of people that wanted this to happen. And Skyler and I talked today, and we both felt like a conversation between the two of us would be really good. So I'm going to ask everybody in the comments, play nice, okay? Because I want you guys to be able to make comments and maybe ask some questions over there when the time is right. But if things get out of control and people are rude or anything like that, I'm going to turn the comments off until we stop. I just want everybody to know that, because I really want something constructive to come out of this, guys. It's the whole reason why I responded to Skyler, and Skyler has been polite enough to respond back in video a couple of times to us. And I think you're going to learn tonight that he's listening, and so am I. So we're going to drop everybody out that's requesting up right now.
Just be respectful is all you're asking.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking. So just bear with me 1 second here. Everybody's dropping out on their own. That's great. You guys are really professional and polite. And then Steph and Zeppo, what I'll do is I'll bring you guys up right before we end the live tonight. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much. Skyler, how are you?
Good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're coming in loud and clear. Hey, first of all, welcome. It's really good to have you in here tonight. And I know you've been experiencing the same thing I have been. I've just, everybody in the country has called me or emailed me and texted me and said, when are you guys going to go on to social media and talk, right? Have you had that happening?
Right. Yes, correct.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and us having this conversation. So, hey, I thought a great place to start, a lot of people that follow me are not farmers and ranchers. They just care about what's happening in the country, and they care about agricultural policy. I wanted to give you time maybe to talk about, your background and how you got into farming and what you're doing now. And then I thought maybe I would do the same thing, because honestly, in our messages and in our conversations, we haven't talked about that yet, and I'd love to hear it. Can we do that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do it. I'll let you go first, because yours is you raise cattle, which is a lot more exciting than what I do.
Right. So I'm 27 years old. My name is Skyler Holden, like you guys know. I had purchased this farm. It's 260 acres. I purchased this farm back in September of 2023. So I'm new to this size of an operation. I'm new to the cow-calf pair operation. The last farm that I had was 52 acres, and we ran a backgrounding operation over there. That was it was a smaller operation. It was a different way of doing it. I like the cow-calf pair a little bit better. I was able to afford this farm by flipping houses, investing that money back into houses, selling houses, and doing a couple rental houses. And I was able to put 20% down on this farm, and I was able to use the FSA programs that are out there in order to purchase this farm. Half of that being the lower interest rate that the FSA office offers, and then the other half with a commercial loan that was at 7%. So using those programs there was the only way I was able to purchase this farm. So I also work a blue-collar job. I am a union worker. I work during the day, and I take care of the farm at night and the weekends, and that's about my story. It kind of shortened it up a little bit.
No, that's okay. So, you represent a lot of small farmers and ranchers. I mean, I would say I do the same thing. I do agroforestry, and I work during the day so I can farm at night. I think there are a lot of people that do that. Hey, just for fun, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the people in farming? Like when you only had the 50 acres and you were doing backgrounding, did you ever have anybody tell you that you weren't really a farmer because you only had 50 acres?
I've got a lot of people that tell me I'm not a farmer now because I don't do it full time.
Yeah. I talk about that all the time on here. Like, I'll tell you a little bit about it as I talk about my background. I'm a little bit older than you, but I grew up on a farm. My dad passed when I was young, and the first 7 years of my life, I lived in government housing in a city. We were dirt poor. And I lived in government housing, and we took advantage of food stamps and all that good stuff. And then when I was 7 years old, my grandfather showed up with some horse trailers and decided we were going to all be farmers because that was a better life than being in a housing project. And he took us out to a 600-acre farm in Brighton, Missouri, kind of north of Springfield down here. And I became a farm kid. And what happened to me is I loved it, Skylar. I was hooked on it from that day on, okay? And we raised, back in the day, you could make money with dairy cattle. So what we did is we would buy dairy calves, heifers when they were born, when the milkers would have those calves, and we would raise them up to when they were ready to be, bred so that they could become milking cows. And my grandfather made a really good living at this. And I did all the things that I see you doing, except without the machinery back then. We
Right.
baled hay and put hay up, and I got cornered up against a tree by an old cow once because I thought it would be great to pet her calf right after it was born. And so I learned all the hard lessons on that farm. Then, when I was 12 years old, my grandfather and I were out digging some post holes for a riding arena to work the horses in. And I got my arm caught in that farm machinery in the power takeoff unit back behind the tractor. There was just like no safety equipment back then, Skylar. It's not like it is today. Everything was just open, and if a bolt broke, you threw a longer one in there. And I got my arm wrapped up in that PTO and spent a couple of months in the hospital. And honestly, that was just like a bridge too far for my grandfather. He never recovered for that. He almost had a heart attack right then when it happened. And I think not to get too emotional about it, but I just think every time he looked at me, I could just see like sorrow in his eyes because he felt like he was the cause of it. So,
Right, I understand.
yeah, when I was in middle school, we sold the farm and I moved to a small town, Bolivar, north of Springfield. And I went to high school there and grew up and went to college. And then for a long time, I was in the corporate world. I worked for AT&T and Sprint, and I was a telecommunications exec. And all along the way during that whole time, I tried to live outside of the cities where I had to work. And I was a rural county party chair in North Carolina in the Democratic Party. And then back in 2008, I moved home. My stepdad and my mom were getting up there in age, and they were running a cow-calf operation as well with 300 pairs, and had about 1,000 acres that they owned and leased. And I came back and I began helping with that. And I'll tell you, man, it's funny because what you've experienced when you went out there and told your story, you had a lot of people that turned on you and said, well, you're getting what you deserve. Farmers can be the same way. Like you talked about those farmers that said when you had 50 acres, you're not a real farmer. When now that you're not doing it full time, you're not a real farmer. I experienced the same thing. When I was helping my mom and stepdad, with that cow-calf operation and working on it all the time, well, you're not a real farmer because you're helping somebody else farm. And then unexpectedly, my stepdad went into the doctor one day and he found out he had a really bad lung disease, and within 2 weeks he passed away. So my mom got this farm that was just, I hope nobody gets mad at me back home for saying this, but my stepdad was doing a really good job of growing it, but he was doing it in the same way partially that you are. He was taking advantage of loans and leasing new land and buying new cows, and the thing was just mortgaged up to the hilt. And we ran it for about 3 or 4 years, and we ran it profitably, but it was just more than my mom could handle. She just couldn't, you know what it's like, Skylar, she could not handle getting paid a couple times a year. That space in between was just too much for her. And a lot of people don't know this, but my mom was starting to have health problems because she had had 2 aneurysms in her brain one night while she was sleeping. This is how country people are, right, Skylar? She never went to the doctor. Right. She had this horrible headache and this big loud boom in her head one night, never went to the doctor to get it checked out. And she was suffering some consequences from that. And she ended up selling the farm. And it took almost everything that she made on the farm to pay the debt off, And she was able to put a little bit back, for her to live off of the rest of her life. And even though, my stepdad owned that farm, he and my mom had been married for, over 20 years. And she'd put her life into that farm. And, it was sad for everybody to have to sell it. It really was. And then several years ago, I bought an agroforestry farm around 200 acres up in St. Clair County. And I've been really open and honest about this on my live here. I had a really large business. I had like a $3 million a year telecommunications business. And the company I was working with, they got bought out by them. And this is why I have a problem with this wealth disparity in our country, Skyler, if you want to know where this comes from. The company got bought out by a multi-billion-dollar government contractor who then proceeded to break their word on our contracts, and I had to get rid of it all. I got rid of the company, and I sold my farm to pay off my debts, and now I have a smaller farm where I do agroforestry. So don't feel bad, brother, because I have people that tell me all the time, because you have a smaller farm and because you do agroforestry, you're not a real farmer. So I guess in that sense, we're in the same boat. And I wanted people to hear your story, and I wanted them to hear my story, because I'm a firm believer that anybody that raises crops, raises livestock, farms the land, whether they've got 5 acres or they've got 5,000 acres, they're a farmer. They're a farmer in my book. That's how I feel about it. You know,
I agree.
Yeah. So, all right. So, as we like to say down here in Missouri, let's get to the rat killing. You did your video where you went out and explained to people, you know, what happened to you, and I think it would be good. Can you just explain, like, I used this program once for a forest plan on my agroforestry farm. Can you just kind of walk people through how the program works? And I think the most important thing is tell them, how you have to put money up front and buy things and you get reimbursed for it. I think that's one thing people aren't understanding, Skyler.
Yeah, you bet. And that is super difficult to explain to somebody that doesn't know how these programs work. So this is a program through the NRCS, and it's the EQIP program. I don't know what EQIP stands for. I'd love to tell you that, but I don't know what it is. And the idea behind this program is we sign a contract to make improvements on our farm that help out with our production. It makes us operate better for the environment. It helps cut down on erosion. It does things that benefits society as a whole and myself as a producer. So some of those things that were included in that program was roughly 40,000 feet of fencing, roughly 2.5 miles of water lines, because every time you fence a section off, you got to be able to get water to the cattle for that section. So we had 13 waters included in that. One well, I believe 30 acres of warm season grasses. So the idea behind the warm season grasses was we get rid of the cool season grasses because all the droughts we've been having lately, we replace that with warm season grasses. So that way, we can combat that drought. So our cows
I'm just curious, what did you put in, Skyler?
What do you mean?
What kind of grass did you put? Did you replace fescue? Did you put another grass in?
Yeah, so we were going to replace fescue. So we haven't even got to that portion of the program yet. So whenever you're doing the seedings, they require you to get all your soil samples up to par. So gotcha. I actually went after our poorest fields in order to put the warm season grasses in. That way, if I'm cutting fescue out, I'm cutting the worst part out and then putting new, good seeds in. So that way we're getting rid of our worst stuff to put in our, warm season grasses there. So we're not cutting out of, good fields in order to put these in. We're cutting out our worst fields. Right. So I still had a lot of, I'm sure with the fertilizer, you can't just put it down and the next week, if the samples are good, it takes time to get that down. So we're still in the process of putting the fertilizer down to get those soil samples up to par in order to put those warm season grasses in. Yeah. But we were looking in the big blue stem. We were looking at trying to remember what those grasses were. We had them all wrote down.
It's not warm enough here for Bermuda yet, right? Like we're still not in that Texas grow zone or whatever. Right.
Yeah, I don't think Bermuda was on the list.
Yeah. Well, how much? Let me ask you this real quick. Kind of this part of it. How much of this if you don't mind me asking, like percentage wise? I know like my reimbursement was like 60%. When I did my forest plan, I basically paid for everything out of pocket, and then I got a 60% reimbursement. What did you don't have to talk about amounts because that's your personal business, but what percentage did you have to put up to fund everything, and then what were they going to give you back?
So I'd actually love to talk about the actual dollar amounts on it.
Let's do it. Go for it. Yeah, I just want you to be comfortable with what you talk about. Yeah.
So you're fine. The percentages, they say it's 95%. And the reason they say 95% is because I'm a beginning farmer. So I actually got a little bit more towards my program because I haven't had over 10 years of a Schedule F on my taxes. But when they say 95%, their figures on what stuff cost is nowhere near what it actually cost.
Right.
So by doing the math on it, I had figured up that, and I don't know what the percentage is, but I had figured up that with me doing the majority of labor and just outsourcing the labor and the stuff that I couldn't do, like digging the well and, you know, installing the well pump and stuff like that, and installing the watering pipes themselves, with me doing all the labor myself, I was figuring I'd be spending around $350,000 to $400,000 for all the projects included in this program. So they were going to cost share on $240,000 on it. So I don't know what percentage that is, but I figured $350,000 to $400,000 is what my out-of-pocket expenses would be, and then they would cost share the $240,000 on those expenses.
Got it. And, you know, I want everybody to think about that. Like, Skyler's not kidding when he says some people don't think he's a farmer because he doesn't do it full time. In Missouri, how many acres do you have right now, Skyler, that you're between what you own and lease that you're working right now?
I just own 260. There's nothing around us to lease. It's just
okay. I got you. But you guys think about it. I'm telling you, 260 acres is a lot of land, especially when you're a dad trying to do it on your own and you're working a full-time job. And to Skyler's point, it's like, think of that investment. I mean, this guy is. I got to hand it to you, brother, because not only are you buying your farm, like this would be a whole different story, right? If you had inherited it all and it was paid off. Like even in my situation, when my stepdad passed away, the thing was mortgaged to the hilt. And that's not an indictment of him. He did that so he could get the funds to grow it even larger. So you're talking about a guy that is trying to pay for his own land. He's trying to pay for his equipment, pay off those loans. And then on top of that, you're doing, I think, what any Democrat would ask you to do. Because one thing you haven't said is all of these programs that you're taking advantage of are also good for the environment. They're very good for the environment. They prevent runoff. They prevent erosion. It allows healthier grass species to grow, which stores more carbon. You know, they're even on the other side of the coin. I know they're profitable for you, Skyler, but these things that you're doing are also very good for the environment, right?
That's correct. Yeah. The my theory on the environment part of it is when we do that fencing, the NRCS requires us to fence out all creeks and all wooded areas.
Right.
And the reason for that is you keep the cattle out of those. They don't disturb that vegetation along those creek banks and down in the woods where, you know, we've gotten, I know you know it, you're local to here. In the last 2 years, we've gotten 5-inch to 8-inch rains multiple times throughout these years. It's taking soils and it's just taking them and putting them down in the rivers.
Yeah. And you know, Skyler, we've had problems down here. It doesn't happen very often because I found that especially small to medium-sized farmers are just the best stewards of the land because we understand that if we take care of the land, it'll take care of us. And I know you're rolling your eyes because that's something that's been said for 100 years. Our dad said it, our grandpa said it, but we've had problems down here before, especially with people who are new to agriculture, guys with just a big wad of cash in their pocket, and they go out and decide they're going to, you know, open a feedlot and have 1,000 cows. We've had problems with them, you know, letting waste run down into the creeks and it gets into our lakes, and we've got E. coli scares. We had a guy down by us that got fined, you know, I think hundreds of thousands of dollars for letting that happen. So you're doing all the right things. You're doing all the right things. So tell us what happened. Did you just get a letter in the mail or? Go ahead. Keep going. Yeah.
I want to touch on the base that you said where a guy with a big wad of cash came in and bought a bunch of, you know, he put a feed barn up and he fed all those cattle. Yeah. The difference between that and what me and you were doing is we had to work for these farms and, you know, we didn't have a lot of income to begin with. So this, you know, the debt of purchasing the farm hanging over your head, if you don't have the land and you don't take care of the land, you're not going to be able to afford to pay for this.
That's right.
What was your question?
I was just going to say, tell us about the day. Did you get a call? Did you get a letter? I'd like to hear kind of the personal part of this. When you were notified that you weren't going to get these funds, and I know there have been some changes in the promises since then, but walk us through that day, because I think people, all of us have a job. All of us are trying to get our kids to school. We're trying to keep our families fed. We want to keep a roof over our head. Tell me about the emotional and personal part of it when you got notified that you may not get these funds. What went through your head? What were you feeling?
So I'd like to let's back up to probably 3 or 4 days before I got that call. So I had just had the well company come out and drill the well, and just got done wrapping up the well probably 4 or 5 days before I got the call, and I let the NRCS agent know that we were completing this part of the project, this part of the contract. So they came out and inspected it that Friday, and so they came out and inspected it, and I knew what the standards were, and we had it built up to the standard. And she says, "It looks great. We'll cut you a check at the early part of next week." So with that being said, she says, "I'll cut you a check at the early part of next week." I said, "Okay, sounds great." All those products that I had purchased for the next step of this contract, I hit the okay on them, and I said, "Order them," because at that point, I got the okay of saying, your funds are on the way for this part of the project. So I hit the okay button. We signed contracts on $13,000 worth of pipe. We signed contracts on $14,000 worth of waters. We signed contracts on $20,000 worth of labor. We signed contracts on the fittings for all those pipes. So you figure the couplers just to connect the pipe to another piece of pipe, $200 or $300 a piece. And you figure for 13 waters, you got to have at least 13 of them right there. So we had thousands of dollars and thousands of dollars that we invested. As soon as I got the okay and said that this part of the section of this contract passed inspection, I went ahead and I went forward with purchasing all this stuff because I was trying to get it done as quickly as possible. And I'll get to why I was trying to get it done as quickly as possible. But now let's go to, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. She had called me, and I knew that it would take a few days for the funding to hit the account. And she had called me on Tuesday, I think it was, and she said that, "Hey, we're not going to be able to pay out." And you could tell the fear in her voice. And
and we've all had those conversations with a banker or a worker that won't show up, or So I'm just kind of cringing right now, man. But go ahead.
Right. So I'm sure I'm not the first person that she called, and if I was the first person she called, I'm sure she was scared to even tell me that. And I wasn't frustrated with her, and I made sure that she knew I wasn't frustrated with her. But she had told me that she said that we're not able to pay out on this contract, and I instantly just asked her, "Well, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my operation? What does it mean for all this money that I just spent that I'm relying on these funds to come through? What does that mean?" And then at that point, I kind of just, she said that she didn't have any answers yet. The payment was frozen. They had a conference call or like a Teams meeting or something like that, right before she had called me to let everybody in RCS know that the freeze was happening. And after she told me that, she was kind of explaining what was going on. To be honest with you, I kind of zoned out, and I just started running numbers in my head. And she was talking, and I don't know what she was saying because I was trying to figure out how I could make these numbers work.
I hear you.
At the end of it, I just told her, well, where do I find answers from? Because I can't just accept that it's frozen. We don't know anything else. We don't know any idea of how long it's going to be frozen. So then I asked her, well, who can I talk to above you? I said, it's nothing against you. Who can I talk to you above you that can get me some answers? So she gave me a name, and I called that number, and I talked with that person, and that person said the same thing. And I said, give me another name. So I called another name, and I called another name, and I called another name. And I finally got up to, I believe it was a lady that runs the NRCS program. And she said, at this point, there's nobody else you can call and give you any answers. You need to call your representatives. You need to fight and see if you can get these fundings unfrozen, get the funds unfrozen.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm just go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I want to hear. Were you? I mean, I can just picture because like when I closed my business down because of what happened with my contractor, you don't hear the rest of the conversation. Like the minute I knew that I was going to have to close everything down, all I could think about is how am I going to pay my employees? How am I going to get them jobs? And how am I going to pay off my debt? And I didn't even hear any of the rest of the conversation I was having with them. What was going through your mind at that time? Did anybody in the process tell you why you weren't going to get the funds?
They said that I knew this going into the program that my program was funded through the Inflation Reduction Act.
Right.
And the reason I knew that is that's something they usually don't just tell you. They don't tell you where your funds came from. But whenever I signed up for this program, I asked them. I was kind of skeptical going to these programs anyway because everybody says, you deal with these programs, sometimes you get screwed. And I was like, no, you can't get screwed because of contracts. So
right.
I asked them, I was a little skeptical going into it. I asked them, I said, we're signing this contract. Are these funds set aside for this contract, or is this funds we're going to have to go find once we finish these items?
Mm-hmm.
And they had let me know that the Inflation Reduction Act, the way that it worked is it added so much money to a pool, and through these programs, as you were getting approved for these programs, and getting approved for these programs was a lengthy process. So we started this back in January of 2024.
Right. Yeah, it took me almost a year.
12 months.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way these programs are getting approved is it's all in a point-based system. And the bigger impact you're going to have on the environment, you get more points. The bigger the impact's going to have on the operation, you get more points. So my program went through multiple rounds of funding, and I kept getting turned down. Mm-hmm. And right there at the end, we ended up securing that funding, and I was super relieved about it, and I really didn't care where the funds came from. I was just happy to see them. So I was just making sure that those funds were set aside. So they pulled it out of that pool of funds out of the Inflation Reduction Act, and they set it aside, and they assigned those funds to each contract. So yes, I did know where the funds came from, and she told me that the Inflation Reduction Act was, I guess she didn't tell me that it was, she said that it was paused due to the stopping of the funds of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you this. Now that we've had 2 federal court judges rule that this funding freeze is unconstitutional, have they gotten back with you yet, Skyler? I know you've been made promises, by maybe some politicians or whatever, but how confident are you at this point on a scale of 1 to 10 that you're going to see these funds?
I'm going to say 1. I guess 2 maybe. It was not 0. I have a little bit of hopes that we will see these. I'm not too confident that this is going to go through, just because. I guess not to get. I guess we can get on the political side of it. The thing is that
listen, that's what we're going to talk about that too. But I think I wanted everybody to know what happened, because when we talk about the political part of it, it's easy to see somebody that says they voted for Donald Trump and just hate them for that, and think anything that comes their way they deserve. And I understand that way of thinking. I get why some people feel that way. But the reason why I wanted you to go through all of this is I wanted people to hear the human side of it. That regardless of who you voted for, you made an agreement with the government that they agreed to meet, and you built your planning financially on your ranch and farm around that planning, and now the government is breaking their promise to you. And I just thought, Skyler, it's critical that people understand that part of it as we move in and talk about the political part. So go ahead.
No, I agree.
Yeah. So who has told you, as of right now, have you talked to any of the politicians that represent Missouri here? Have you had a chance to speak to any of them, and what have they told you?
The only person that had got back with me, I have not reached out to any of our, like our state representatives, the ones that I'm not too great at the political lingo on it, but the ones that represent Missouri itself, I haven't reached out to them because it's not a Missouri
program. It's above
their
pay grade, right.
So I haven't reached out to them at all because they're not going to be able to help me out at all. But I have reached out to Ann Wagner's office and Josh Hawley's office, and Ann Wagner, I have not heard back from her. Josh Hawley, I had somebody from Josh Hawley's office reach out to me, and the lady had told me that she's really surprised that the funding was frozen, because the funding wasn't supposed to be frozen to individuals. And that really caught me off guard, because if it wasn't frozen to individuals, this program, when I signed up for it, I didn't sign up for it under Cattleman Family Farm. I didn't sign up for it under the LLC. I signed up for it under Skyler Holden. So if
I'm
it doesn't
glad you said that, Skyler, because I'm glad you said that and I didn't say it, because I think that's part of the problem. Let's just jump into the politics of this a little bit. I'm going to tell you, on your behalf, you didn't ask me to do this, but I jumped all over Jason Smith, Congressman Jason Smith from Missouri, in a video the other day. I don't know if you saw this, but he was on CNN, and one of the talking heads there, told him about what was happening to you and asked him, what do you have to say to people like Skyler? And I'm not kidding you. His response was, it's all going to be okay. These people knew when they voted for Donald Trump, he was going to shake things up a little bit. And I did a video and I said, Jason, it's all going to be okay is not the policy response that farmers and ranchers are looking for right now. When you've got an $80,000 shortfall.
I'm going to touch on that interview.
Yeah. Talk. Go ahead.
Right. I'm going to touch on that interview. I seen that interview. I seen the first part of that interview. Somebody had tagged me in a video of it, and it's aggravating because they said that you got to be patient. We had to go through this. Well, it's like, well, are you going to be done by June whenever my farm payments due? Because if you're just going to go through this, you didn't give me a timeline to plan around. You just said that change is coming, and I think the CNN reporter hit the nail on the head with that, because she said you guys are taking a sledgehammer to these programs instead of a scalpel. And if you guys are going to end all these programs, it has detrimental effects instantly when this funding stops. So I think that there is waste in government spending. I think that there is, but I don't think that the way of going after that waste is stopping all the programs and finding the issues there. I think that the issue is you need to hire auditors to go through these programs and make sure that everything is the money's going where it needs to go. And another thing I want to touch on is the applying for this program, and I made a video on this. I got super aggravated because every month they were sending me a paper that said, do you make less than $900,000 a year? And
hey, Skyler, hold on one sec. I got to do a TikTok thing here. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. They just make me do a little puzzle piece, but I did it, and you're good. Keep going.
You're good. So they were sending me this letter that made sure that I didn't make over $900,000 a year. And it got aggravating with me because they kept sending it, and they kept sending it. There's one day I got 6 of them in the mail. And so I'd fill the paper out, and I'd go in there. I'd take it back to the NRCS office because I couldn't take a picture of it and send it to them. I had to take it up to the office. So I had to keep going up there. But I got aggravated with it, but now I see what that was. It's making sure that these programs are going to the people that actually need them and not the big corporations that already have all the funding to do this. And I think that $900,000 is high, but I also understand that my farm has an income of, I think it's roughly $200,000 a year. Now my expenses are $180,000 a year, but my farm has an income of $200,000 a year. So I can see where you need a little bit higher a dollar amount on that because, let's say that there's a farm out there that's 1,000 acres that is somebody just like me farming it, and they have a lot of income, but their expenses outweigh a lot of that income. So that $900,000 they asked for was not the gross, but it was the net. If I got those correctly, I might have flopped those, but it was the actual money you're bringing in. It was the actual money you're bringing in, not your profit.
Gotcha. Sorry about that. There's just a little bit of delay, and that's on my part. That's okay. Recently, what happened? We have auditors in the federal government. Now, I'm not saying they do a perfect job. Okay, nobody's going to make that argument. All right, because there is waste in government. But the problem is, right after they made the decision to freeze these funds, they got rid of all the inspector generals, and the inspector generals are the ones, Skyler, that come in and look at these different programs and do a deep dive to make sure that the money is being spent the way it's supposed to be spent. So maybe this is where we can get into the political part of it a little bit. So for people out there that saw Project 2025, and I know people are just beating you over the head with this thing, okay? But for people that read Project 2025, there's a section in there about agriculture, and I'd make the argument, like, Skyler, were you farming when we did the Right to Farm bill in this state? Do you remember that? A few years ago, we did a Right to Farm bill.
Will, to be honest with you, I do not know.
That's okay. No, it's all right. A lot of people don't know about it. Don't worry about it.
I'm so involved with politics that I don't know.
I bet you're really involved from now on. Right. But we did this thing called the Right to Farm bill in the state of Missouri, and what they did in that bill, Skyler, is they put a whole bunch of flowery language in it in the beginning to say, we got to protect the farmer's right to farm. It's an American institution. It's and it was just paragraph after paragraph, blowing, your grandpa and mine would have said, blowing smoke up your what. And then when you get down into the body of the bill itself, it was written by this group called the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC. And the Republicans in our state, they just took this bill, they put their name on it, And the couple of things that it did is, number one, it allowed foreign countries and foreign governments to buy farmland. And I don't know about you, but I'm completely opposed to that. I don't think Chinese companies should be able to come over here and buy farmland to put hog barns on. And
no, and I agree. I had made a video on that, and I think it's 384,000 acres, if I don't quote me on it, but I think that's what it was. But I made a video on how family farms like mine are going under, and China understands the security side of the food supply, and they understand the importance of having farmers, and now they're purchasing our farmland, and I think it's an issue of security.
Yeah. Well, the second thing it did is it allowed big CAFOs to come in. So just to explain to everybody what that is, it's a commercial animal feeding operation. And here in Missouri, we're really lucky. We've got some of the best water sourcing in the country. We've got water. You don't have to dig super deep for it compared to other states, and we've got a lot of it. And what this bill now allows is the local counties have been fighting it, so it hasn't happened yet. But what this right to farm bill allows now is somebody could come in and throw in a 3,000 unit hog barn in beside you, and it could be even though it's next door to Skyler's farm, the waste from that could poison his water that his cattle drink. And now all of a sudden he's in a situation where he's having to bring water in or put in filtering systems, something like that. So the point I'm getting to, Skyler, on the political side is there are just a lot of things out there, on the Republican side where they've called it good for farming or right to farm, that kind of thing, where we get caught on the back end with, tricks like this. So I know one of the questions that's everybody has asked, and I wanted to give you a chance to answer it here is, did you ever see Project 2025 before the election? Had you heard about it? What did you know about Trump's plan for agriculture before the election?
So I did not vote based on I didn't vote because I liked Trump. I voted because I didn't like the last administration. And that is a wrong way of doing it. And there's a lot of times that, at the previous elections that people said the exact same thing. You voted because you didn't like this person, so you voted against them. And, that's why I cast my vote, to be honest with you. And to touch on the Project 2025. So I had heard about Project 2025. I think I heard it on the news, or I heard it somewhere. I heard that Trump's running on Project 2025, and then I heard that Trump's not running on 2025, and this is this is fake news. So then I said, you know what, I'm not even going to look into it because it's not what he's running on, and I just believed that blatantly. I just believed it, and I didn't look into it. So I started looking into, after you made that video, I pulled up Project 2025, and somebody said it was the agricultural section, and it was section 10 of it, Article 10, maybe it was. And so I started reading it, and to be honest with you, I don't understand it. They make it, there's so many words in there that it
is a hard read. There's no doubt about it.
So I got 2 pages in, and I just gave up on it. I still couldn't understand it, and I hope to have that conversation with you to try and kind of go through Project 2025 and help explain it to people that don't understand, what it's saying in that. So I did look into it after the election, and I still don't understand it, and I would like to understand it. I'd like to figure out, what's going on in there, what's the plan. But it takes a lot of time to sit down and actually go through it and understand it, and a lot of times what I don't have.
Let me ask you this: Who could you have heard that message from before the election? Who could you have heard that message from that you would have trusted before the election? In other words, there were a lot of people. I want to make sure this question makes sense. There were a lot of people before the election that were out there talking about how bad Project 2025 is. I know on social media, though, I'm going to catch a lot of heat for saying this, but I know on social media, it is true the FYPs are set up to feed us what we want to hear. So I never see a dissenting view when I log into TikTok, for instance. But who could have delivered that message about Project 2025 that you would have trusted and listened to and said, okay, I'm not going to vote for this guy because he wants to cut the funding for agriculture. He wants to eliminate crop insurance. He wants to cut out future ag programs, et cetera. Because it is true. I mean, I want you to second research everything I say, but what it points out in there is this. It says that they want to eliminate the grant programs for agriculture, and what they want to do, you know how with crop insurance, 60% of it's paid by the federal government and 40% is paid by the American people. What they want to do is they want to just get rid of the 60% funding, so that row crop farmers and people that, you know, buy crop insurance, if they're doing silage crops and those kinds of things, they want to get rid of it. The last thing they want to do is they want to take everything right now that is being run under the Department of Agriculture, the USDA, and they want to move it under the Health and Human Services Department, which, you know, we all knew all along as farmers and ranchers that he was going to name RFK Jr. as the head of HHS, and he's horrible for farming and ranching. So I think some of the heat that I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think a lot of the heat you've taken is, like, the plan was there. He was telling farmers and ranchers, if you vote for me, this is going to be very, very bad for you. Who could you have heard that message from before the election that you would have said, I trust that person and I'm not going to vote for him now that I know what he's going to do? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, there's a whole lot to unpack in that question.
Yeah.
So I want to touch on the FYP, and a lot of people think that my FYP had Trump, stuff in my FYP, and my FYP had nothing political at all, because, like you said about RFK, and they knew that they were going to put RFK in there. I didn't know that. I don't, and this is a mistake, but I don't do anything with politics, and I try to stay away from everything politics. So my FYP didn't have anything with Trump. It didn't have anything with Harris. It didn't have anything with anybody. It just had farm content on it. So I wasn't educated on either side of what was going on. I don't know where I seen the Project 2025, and I don't know, I don't remember where I seen that at, and I don't remember, everybody saying that it wasn't what he was running on. But I can tell you, honestly, that I have going into this election, I'm trying to think what the word is. I had a distrust in the Democratic Party. And that had shaped my mentality of believing that what they were saying to me wasn't true. So I didn't really, look into if it was true or not, because I just figured I didn't trust them, so I didn't listen to them. Now that's wrong, and I should have listened to both sides. I should have fact checked it. I didn't know that then, but that's the honest to God truth is I had a distrust for the Democratic Party, so I just didn't believe what I was hearing.
Who could you have heard that from, though, that you would have believed? Like, before the election, I know you had a distrust of the Democratic Party, so it probably wouldn't have meant anything if, Kamala Harris or a Democrat running for Senate here in Missouri said it. But who could you have heard it from? The reason I'm asking this question is because my criticism of the Democratic Party, and don't get me wrong, brother, I'm going to speak some truth to you here. I'm not excusing that you didn't do the research, okay? Because I think that's critical. Because I bet in every other aspect of your life in regard to farming, you've probably read more than half the people here about, the farming aspect of what you do to make sure you get it right before you make a decision. But who could you have heard that message from that you would have believed or put more thought into the whole Project 2025? Who needed to deliver that message for you in order for you to believe it?
To be honest with you, I don't think anybody could have.
Okay.
And
you're being honest. You're being honest, and I think that's part of the problem. Is just 40 years of in my video I made the point that there's 40 years of them telling us we need to distrust everything, right? We need to distrust everything, and I think if you'll let me say it, and I don't mean this like accusatory, because you're not the only one. I think that there are a lot of farmers and ranchers that just trust almost everything, and they get to the point, like you said, where I think everybody's lying to me. I don't think anybody's telling me the truth. So when that information does get laid out there in front of you, we sometimes just overlook it. And I can't tell you, I know it's not easy to say I didn't do the research, I didn't pay attention to it, I didn't know what was going on. That I'm a white male and I'm a farmer, so I know how hard it is to say that. So I appreciate you being right up front about it.
No, and I'll be honest with everything. I want to hit on one of the comments somebody said with no
don't
family.
don't start looking at the comments.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah,
no,
go ahead.
Fine.
Go ahead.
I like this when they said no family and friends, and I wanted to hit on.
Yeah.
We don't talk about politics, and you know just as well as I do, coming from our area. There's two things you don't talk about: it's religion and politics. And that is across the board. We don't have those discussions, and that's part of the problem. Is we're afraid that if we have those discussions, they're going to blow up into, some of the stuff that's blowing up on my TikTok. We're afraid that if we're going to hurt somebody's feelings, that somebody's going to get loud and is driving those conversations out where nobody wants to listen anymore. Nobody wants to interact with those conversations because on either side, if you don't agree, the 5% of people that are the loudest on each party, they represent the party as a whole, and it shuts out conversations with the other 95% from each one of the parties where nobody wants to listen anymore.
Yeah. Let me ask you the tough question, okay? And again, I told you when you came on here, I really want to know. So you've had a lot of people. I think one of the issues that you're running into is people want you just to say, I was wrong. That's kind of like their first step that they're looking for. They want you to say, I was wrong. I should have done the research. I voted for somebody that wasn't good for me. Now I'm going to open up my mind to considering, both sides of the equation. Whenever the election rolls around, I'm going to look at the Democrats and I'm going to look at the Republicans and I'm going to make the right decision. If there's a part of this you don't want to answer, Skyler, I respect that. Okay,
but I got a response for you.
On that journey, where are you in that? How do you feel about? Are you at the point where you're ready to say? I know you've said it was wrong not to do the research, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Where are you on that journey of I made the wrong decision voting for Donald Trump? Have you reached that point yet, or where are you?
I think that what Donald Trump is doing right now is impeachable because he has.
Skyler, say that one more time.
I think that what Donald Trump is doing right now is impeachable because what he is doing is illegal, and there is a court system in place, a judicial system that is checking him, and he's not abiding by the check. And that's the way that everything is set up. I was very well educated in American history, and I was very well educated in the way that, I did really well in high school, and I understand how the government works. I just didn't affiliate with it because I didn't like it because you was told not to talk about politics. So I don't understand how the system works. And the way the system works is there's a judicial system that's supposed to check the executive branch. And that judicial system is checking the executive branch right now, and he's not backing down. I think that is impeachable offense, whether it's Democrat or Republican. That's what really drives me nuts about, this Democrat or Republicans, this argument of who's right and who's wrong. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, what he's doing is illegal, and it needs to be stopped. If it was Harris doing the same thing, I would think the same way. If it was Biden doing the same thing, I think the same way. If you think you're above the laws, that's an issue.
Skyler, can I tell you something? I told you when we talked on the phone today, I cry at grocery store openings, so you got to forgive me a little bit. I don't think you realize the power in what you just said. Maybe you do. But I don't think you realize the power in what you just said for a lot of different reasons, okay? Because in this country, both sides don't, and I'm not doing whataboutism here, this is the truth. In this country, both sides don't think the other side has the capability to say, I was wrong. And I got to tell you, brother, I worked to get Bill Clinton elected back in 1992. Hell, you probably weren't even born yet. Don't answer that question. But, when he supported NAFTA, I wrote letters to the editor against him. When he did what he did with Monica Lewinsky, I didn't think it was an impeachable offense. But I wrote a letter to the editor saying that I thought he abused his power because he was in a position of authority above her. I criticized Obama for his use of drones in the war against terror. And I've never understood this mentality that a lot of Republicans and some Democrats have, that they don't criticize the people that they voted for. So I want to say this. I want to say this real quick.
Okay.
What you just said has a power that you don't understand. And you and I come from a part of the country where when you're wrong, you just say you're wrong. But we've lost that even in rural America. So I just want you to know how much I appreciate what you just said. And And I mean, later on, you're going to think, why did this old farmer from Southwest Missouri make such a big deal out of that? But it's a big deal, Skyler.
No, and that's the same thing with, you said that, Republicans have this problem and Democrats have this problem, but you say the Republicans have a big problem with this and Democrats have a little problem with this, but sitting in the middle where I'm at,
you experience the other side. I got you.
Right. You're a Democrat, so you see the way things are a little bit different than I do, but being somebody unbiased in the middle of it, I think both sides will not say that the party that they voted for is wrong in doing what they're doing. And that's what drives me nuts about this whole thing is when this started, I was labeled, MAGA. And that's what drives me nuts is just because I voted for Trump doesn't make me the MAGA thing. And that language hurts the argument so bad. It's just like the libtard and both sides do it. And it's the 5%, the loudest people that are hurting the other 95% of their party. Whether it's Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, I think the point I was trying to make is that on the Democratic side, like, you don't see it because, you probably don't follow the same people I do and that kind of thing. But, you experienced some things that were really dark. People coming after your family, and I'm not even going to go into it because I don't want to give it any oxygen. And I've told people on this live, that's wrong, okay? That's absolutely wrong. But what I've experienced is from my own side. One of the reasons, to be completely selfish about it, that I'm glad you said what you did about the impeachment piece, is there were a lot of people that came after me from our side of the fence that said, you're trying to humanize a horrible person. You're trying to do whataboutism. You're trying to make it look like it's not a big deal that he voted against people that are protected, etc. And I made a point even in that video, Skyler, and I'm sure you saw it, where I said, we've got to fight every day to stop the policies of Donald Trump. But what this shows tonight, what you and I did tonight, is it does show, and frankly, the people that aren't going to agree with us that we need to have civil conversations, we may never change their mind, right? But the truth is, we've got to have more conversations like this. And I'm not going to tell everybody, some of the other things that you and I are going to do quite yet. I want you and I to do that together, but we're going to continue to have this conversation, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's a good thing. So, one last question for you. When you talk to other people in your area, like I live in an area, my farm is in an area that went 82% for Donald Trump. So, all my friends from high school that I have lunch with, etc., they all voted for Donald Trump. I'm starting to hear the first rumblings of, people in rural America. Like I've had several of my friends this week with all these firings and the freezes on the, on the agricultural programs, etc. I've had a lot of them. It's funny, Skyler, because it'll be like a quiet phone call. Like, man, Will, I think I may have made a mistake, or what's going on here? What's happening? What are you hearing from people around you in farming and ranching? Is it something you guys talk about? Does it never come up? What are you seeing?
So the only people that I socialize with are the guys that I work with, and there's 5 of us.
Yeah.
I don't really do friends too much because I'm out here on the farm all the time working. I don't really socialize with a lot of people. But the first thing that made me think this guy's doing something wrong is there was an executive order, and I might be incorrect on this. I haven't looked into it too far, but I think there was an executive order signed, and it pretty much said that they were ending the 14th Amendment, saying that if you were born in the United States, you weren't a U.S. citizen. And that really perked me up, and I was like, no, this ain't right. Per Constitution, if you were born in the United States, no matter if your mom and dad were illegal migrants or whatever the case is, if you're born in the United States, you are a U.S. citizen per Constitution. And so that was something that really perked up my interest, and I was like, maybe this isn't really a good idea what he's got going on here. And then it escalated. Then I seen that. Well, hell, now my funding's frozen. So then it was like, what else is going on that I'm not seeing that that's going on that is not right.
So you'd seen some red flags then even before the funding got cut off.
Right. I told my wife when those executive orders got signed, and I don't know how I seen them. It might have been, it just popped up on Facebook or something like
Well,
that.
it's everywhere. Yeah, it's everywhere, no doubt.
Right. I just so it happened that, whenever I scrolled through it or whatever the case was, that I had heard about that, and I instantly told my wife that that doesn't seem right. And then I also told her, when all this election was going on, I told her that it really seems weird that a lot of people idolize this guy. They act like they, and I'm seeing it more now. There's a lot of people that think this guy is like a god. And I told her that before the election. I was like, man, this is really weird that so many people think so highly of this guy, and I'm not seeing it. This isn't right.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. I really am. And, what a great start. And one thing I do want to ask you before we end, because we do have a lot of people in protected communities that follow us there. I've got a family member who is part of the LGBTQ community, and her family had to kind of go through that whole process, and they did everything right. They love her. She's part of the family. They treat her the same way that, they did before she came out. And I just wanted to ask you, I'd seen some of your videos, where you're talking. I don't want you, if you don't feel comfortable talking about the conversations, but I saw where I thought you said you were talking to some people in these communities, LGBTQ, and maybe some farmers of color, etc. How's that going? Are you opening up your eyes to some things that maybe you hadn't been exposed to before?
Yeah, somebody had told me, I guess it's really not related to the farming part of it, but somebody had told me that before, whenever slavery ended, that's whenever college started costing money. That's whenever college wasn't free anymore after that. And I haven't fact checked that, but if that is the case, and I'm believing, what I'm hearing there, I'll have to fact check that. But if that's the case, that's really eye opening to me. That's different there. I didn't know that before. So that's the black community. I'm understanding some of the struggles that they're going through, and I've talked to a couple of different people, and the struggle that they have going on, due to the race. And then the LGBTQ community, I'm kind of just hearing their opinions on, how they came out, and, how all this stuff's, making them feel. And I'm trying to
them. Yeah.
Right. And, I'm just trying to listen to everybody and try and just, at this point, this is where I'm educating myself. So I'm still in the education process, and it's going to take a lot of time because I haven't educated myself at all up to this point. So this is where I'm at, is I'm trying just to listen to these people and understand their perspective and understand where they're at and how they got to be where they're at. So that way it gives me the empathy part of it, of trying to understand where you're coming from the other side of the aisle.
Yeah. Skyler, I want to say one thing to you that I think is important. I really appreciate you coming on tonight. The one thing I want to tell you, and I just want to put this bug in your ear because I want you to think about it. I think it's incredibly important, and I'm not patronizing you. I really mean it when I say I'm glad that you're learning about these things. It's critically important. I think the thing we've all got to remember in rural America, especially us white guys, is that the people that are being impacted by this the most, they can't wait for us to come along. They need us now, if that makes sense, because these programs that are being cut, eliminating DEI and allowing discrimination in the workplace against these things, it's going to hurt them now, right now, as we speak. So I just want to tell you, I really appreciate the fact that you're learning about it. But I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that they need us to learn about it now, brother. They need us to be fighting for them now, and to push back against these decisions now. So just take that as it's meant to be. And listen, I wanted to tell you, I am trying to put together a live to talk with some black farmers around the country, because I don't have a lot of exposure to that either. As somebody that's worked in politics for a long time, I've obviously worked shoulder to shoulder with people of color on voting rights issues and non-discrimination issues, etc. But I really don't know any farmers of color because there aren't any in my area. So I've been reaching out to some farmers of color around the country to see if they'd be interested in coming on a live. If you've got the time to join for part of that, would you like to join and have a conversation with them with me?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, listen, we'll keep talking, and when the time's right, we'll tell them about some other things that are going on. And Skyler, listen, you spent a whole hour with me, and I know you've got other things to do with your family and on the farm. So I just wanted to tell you thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. I look forward to more of these conversations.
All right. Have a good night, Skyler. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, guys, let me get Zeppo and Steph up here, if I can find them, down there in the comments. Steph and Zeppo, if you guys don't mind, just go ahead and request to come up, and we'll have a little bit of a conversation here before we close it out for the night. You know, guys,
Well,
yeah.
that was fantastic, and I think the chat really started to understand towards the end there that this is a young man who's growing and trying to make a life for himself and his wife and learning along, and he's willing to learn, willing to listen to you, and just like we're asking him to accept people who are different from him, we have to extend that same grace to him. He may seem different to a lot of us for his point of views, perhaps, but we have to extend the same grace if we're going to ask him to do that. So I do applaud him for being brutally honest up here and just being himself.
Yeah.
And you did a real good job of covering all of it, Will. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I hope I hope that Skyler saying he thought it was an impeachable offense is the shot heard around the world. Okay?
Yeah,
because
definitely.
there were a lot of people on our side of the fence that were saying he'll never change. He doesn't believe that anything he did was wrong. There's no mea culpa. He hasn't admitted that he's made a mistake. And there were a lot of people on his side of the fence. I can guarantee you guys right now that him saying that in this live is going to cause him grief on his side of the fence. Okay? And for some of you that think I wasn't hard enough on him or that kind of thing, I'm trying to be cognizant of the fact that this guy has a job and a family and those kinds of things. And I just wanted to take this conversation, naturally where it could go. But I hope Skyler saying that he thinks it's an impeachable offense, I hope that's the shot heard around the world. I really, really do.
And everyone knows that Will is serious because he's tapping the desk.
Yeah.
I was texting him, Steph. I'm like, you're back.
I've got, and I turned my phone over because I wanted to dedicate, myself to the live.
Wait until I put a speaker in your ear, though.
Yeah,
you're not going to be able to ignore that.
Yeah. I'm not going to listen, I'm just an old farmer from Missouri. I'm not going to make everybody happy. I mean, you guys saw what happened at the beginning of the live. People are starting to come after me now. That was somebody from my own county that was coming on to try to make trouble because my mom had an aneurysm and a stroke and she had to sell the family farm. And they were coming on here to belittle me for that. But, the bottom line is stuff like that, guys, it gets under my skin because I'm a human being. But we're going to fight this fight no matter what anybody says, okay? We're going to fight this fight no matter what anybody says. I don't care who comes after me. I keep getting these warnings. Even as I've been doing these media interviews, guys, I've had people telling me, this is going to open you up to attacks. People are going to be digging into you. And I'm like, let them, I've told you guys everything there is to know. I lost a company because of the oligarchs. And I sold a farm so that I could pay off the debts from that and pay my employees. I'm not ashamed of anything I've ever done in my life, so I say let them come. Because everybody has experienced hardship in this world, and if we can't understand that in each other, then we're doomed. More than politics or anything else, if we can't offer people the grace to say I was wrong and I want to be involved in getting the right thing done, then there's no hope. It's over. We might as well pack our bags, put on our Nike tennis shoes, and go see the funny people that live behind the meteor that's coming through. And you guys who are older know what I'm talking about. But I thought that was great. I really appreciate it. And to all of you over in the comments, thank you very much. Even those of you that, were upset and wanted me to ask other things, you were still respectful over there. So I really, really do appreciate it. Thank you.
think the chat did real well. I think they did a good job. I think it's fair for people to bring up, some issues, but I thought they were respectful. And I think, Will, what you just said is important, that we're going to continue to do the work. We're not going to give up. And I think the people who are on our side, who are complaining, this has been a shock to the system, and
Yeah.
I'm sorry about the things that they said to you personally, because that's not fair play.
That's okay,
But
though. That's
I
all
think
right.
those people will also come around, because a lot of people are just absolutely feeling hopeless, and like they don't know what to do, and they don't know if it's going to get better. But as long as we continue to push back, it will get better.
Yeah. Yeah, guys, I think what we'll probably do is take this live and post it over on, I'll probably split it into two parts. As Steph and Zeppo know, it ain't going to be me doing it because I barely am able to do this thing. But
I'm
I'll have
screen recording it for you.
Okay,
Just
I'll
Skylar's
have.
part.
All right, great. I'll either take that or I'll have my boys separated into two parts so that people can watch it separately, and we'll put it over on YouTube. Zeppo, I'm about out of voice. Do you mind going through how people can follow us in other places?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you all for joining us tonight. This has been absolutely full night of information, and really just what just happened is just so amazing, and we need to see more of that. So thank you for being here to witness that, and thank you to Skyler for coming. It's not, as some of you know, it's not easy to get up in this panel, even if you're on the same side. So thank you, Skyler. We do have other socials, and there's an easy way to get there right now. We will have a website coming up here pretty soon to make it even easier. But for now, what you do is you click on Will's profile. There's a link tree in there. You click on the link tree, and you'll see all our socials. You're going to see Instagram, and you're going to see YouTube on there. You'll see, I think your Blue Sky is up there as well.
Yeah.
Just be sure and follow us. Subscribe to YouTube. It's free to subscribe over at YouTube, because I know I keep saying this, but it is going to happen. I promise you, we are going to be doing some exclusive videos to YouTube. So I don't want you to miss out on that. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen to TikTok, although I heard some good news today that it's sticking around. So just make sure that you're following us everywhere. And of course, make sure you're following Will and Steph and myself. And I also, speaking of following, I want to thank you all who followed Skyler, because I think that that's going to mean something to him when he, goes and takes a look and sees that he gained a lot of followers from tonight. So yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you, mods, for doing a good job through that.
You mods did an incredible job. That's
it. Yeah.
It did. There were so many comments going through that I finally just had to quit looking, guys. I was like, all right, I don't know if I've got undiagnosed ADHD or what, but I was like, I got to quit looking at the comments because there's so much stuff in there.
I think Jill has 4 hands. Pretty
she
sure.
does.
Right?
Jill,
She's
you're a
fast.
superhero. You're a superhero, Jill. You really are. Well, here's what I hope. I hope that when we take these clips and we put them out on social media, and I hope all of you that go into lives and talk with people on our side and the other side, I hope you'll tell them about this conversation, guys, because you know what? I'm going to tell you something before we close up here. What happened tonight is the most frightening thing imaginable to this administration. What happened tonight is the most frightening thing that could happen to this administration. They are banking on the fact that we are going to continue to fight these culture wars, that we are going to continue to shut each other out, that we are going to continue to fail to have conversations like this. What happened tonight, I guarantee you, is frightening to the powers that be. Because just imagine if these kinds of conversations happened all over the country. Imagine if these kinds of conversations happened all over the country. And it's just like I challenged Skyler. I want you guys to make sure you spread the word that I did that when our side comes after me over the next few days for having this conversation with him. You heard me tell him, I'm really glad that you're looking into these things like the LGBTQ community and people of color, but they need our help now, so learn fast. You guys know where I was going with that, and Skyler does too. And we're going to have further conversations. And I'm learning from him too, guys, because I started this whole thing because I wanted to have an impact on rural America. And the best way that I can understand to reach people that disagree with me to have these kinds of conversations is to have those conversations and listen to them. And so I'm learning from this too, and it's a good thing. And what happened tonight is going to scare the hell out of the powers that be. And I think that's a good thing. And let them come after us, because I know no matter what they do to me, all of you have my back. I'm not afraid. Stephanie, give us a little bit of hope here tonight.
Okay, well, for everybody that's new here, and I think we have a few, I usually end or give my little ending piece as joy is an act of resistance. And I try to give people ideas of ways to find joy in their day, because we can't let this get us down. We've got to keep our heads up. We've got to keep our minds right. We've got to keep fighting and resisting any way we can. So what I did today, and I do often every coming up on spring, I do this, is I start looking at my seed catalogs. I get such a thrill out of looking at the flowers and figuring out my garden and my flower beds and what I'm going to plant in them, and getting my seeds in and getting them started. So it will take your mind over if you're into that kind of stuff. So I make my Pinterest pages of all the flower beds I want to plant, and then I go through the seed catalog and see if I can even afford to do it.
Steph, I'm
So
laughing
that's
because
what I did today.
I'm laughing because my dining room table right now is covered with seed catalogs, and I sit there and do the same thing. I just go through and look at all the different plants. But that's why I do agroforestry. I love plants. So
Yeah, exactly. And it's something about it. It's relaxing.
it's cathartic. All right, deliver the line, Steph. We're all waiting for it.
Because joy is an act of resistance. So go find your joy today, everyone.
That's right. That's right. All right, Zeppo, shut it down.
Sorry about that. I wanted to I wanted to go grab the email because I just want to tell everyone. I'm going to put this email in the chat here. What you can do is you can email us here if you're interested in our Discord. In our Discord is where we're doing the organizing and where we're going to organize to take action. So all you got to do is send us an email here, and either Will or I will get back to you with an invite to the Discord. But that's if you want to get involved. There's a lot of cool stuff that we're starting to organize, and a lot of people there are really starting to step up and take initiative on their own. They're organizing around states. They're organizing around issues. So if you need some way to get involved, and believe me, when you get involved, it does make you feel a lot better. This is the thing to do. Send us an email. It's the back40family@gmail.com. And we'll get you into that Discord.
All spelled out.
Yeah.
Spelled out. The back 40 family at
when I paste
gmail.com.
it in there, are you all seeing it? Because I can't
I
tell.
don't see it. No, it's not
Okay.
in there. Somebody banned you, buddy. There you go. There it is,
Oh,
Zeppo.
man.
You know
Oh,
what?
man.
We've just got so many people in here tonight that the chat is way behind. So that's
Going
great.
too fast. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
So anyway, email us there. We'll get you into the Discord. Remember to follow Will on his socials. Our next live is going to be our Remember When live.
Tell everybody about this, Zeppo.
All right, on Saturday from 2 to 4 p.m. Central Time. Our Remember Live is if you change your profile picture to a loved one or something, a friend, a teacher, grandmother who gave you good advice, whoever it is that really meant something to you in your life or, guided you in some way, somebody that really means something to you. Change your profile picture to that person. We'll bring you up into the panel, and you'll get a minute to tell us about who that is and why you're honoring them on Saturday. So that's this Saturday, so day after tomorrow, from 2 to 4 p.m. Central Time. Change your profile picture to a loved one. We're calling it our Remember When Live. You'll be able to come up into the panel, tell us a little bit about your loved one and why they affected your life and what they mean to you. And I think it's going to be a really special live, and everyone's invited.
Yeah. Hey, Zeppo, how soon could we put up a video here on TikTok letting people know where else they could follow us to see the Skyler conversation? And then, Steph, is it something easy you can do to send me that video so that I could get it up tonight? Or should we set the expectation that we'll get it up tomorrow?
I think you should let your boys do it because I realized I had my earphone in and I bet the audio did not record.
Okay.
So,
All right.
I did record the he should be impeached part. I got that.
Well, let's put
Good
up the
job.
whole conversation. We'll get that done tomorrow, guys. We'll throw up a bit just because I know some of you are panicking. Like, I didn't see the email. I don't know. We'll throw up a video tomorrow, so make sure you follow me. Tomorrow, go look at my page, and we'll throw up a video that tells you where you can follow us on YouTube and the other sites. And then tomorrow, as soon as my boys come help their technically challenged dad, we will get the full interview with Skyler up on YouTube, okay? We'll get her done. All right, guys, thank you so much. I think tonight changed the world, and that's not an exaggeration. If we take what happened tonight and we spread it all over social media, especially by sharing that video and showing people what happened, I think this is going to have an impact that goes way beyond the back 40 and what we did here. Okay? Love every one of you. Have a great night. Join us Saturday and bring those pictures of the people you love who have gone on before you, and take a minute to tell us what they meant to you and what great people they were. And let's just all cry together, dry tears together, and remember the people we love. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night, Will. Good night, Steph.
Good night. Good night, everyone.